So make sure that when you come into history, you come in at 11:45. That way you're on time. So thank you to those of you that were on time. A lot of us are still getting here. I'm going to get into our lesson today. So let me share my screen and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. So what we are today, we are going to be learning about the potato famine in Ireland. So recently we've been learning about immigration and kind of examining how people and why people immigrated to the US, and what was so special about that and the American dream and aspects like that. To get us started, I want you to work on your do now. If you have your pack, you're going to work on the connections here, which is the do now, for 2 minutes. If you don't have the packet, I am posting a link to Google Drive where you can get that packet. So I'm going to post that now for you in the chat. So you're working on the connections. If you don't have a packet, please go grab one from online. About a minute left to work in the connections here. $20 seconds, and I'm going to go over the answers. Okay, and our time is up. So I'm going to write the answers on the screen here. So the answer to A is false, B is true, C is false, D is true, and E is false. For number 2, the answer you want is D, the lack of stability in the United States. For number 3, you could have written maybe a variety of things here. But there were, first of all, you could talk about the 4 main waves of immigration. So a lot of people immigrated. The next thing you could talk about is that there were many opportunities due to industrialization.
Mr. Perennial?
Yes. You have a question?
Is it this?
What?
Is it this?
I cannot see your packet, actually. I cannot see it because I'm in the screen share. What I would say, I don't remember. I think the cover says immigration, but you can go on Google Drive and find the packet if you're unsure. Thank you for being polite about that. Now we got to keep moving here. So once again, today we're going to be continuing to study immigration and emigration, and we are going to really look at why this happened and what were the factors that led to people immigrating to the US and emigrating from their home countries. To open up, I want everybody to define, I want you to send in the chat to me the definition of immigrant and emigrant. So what was an immigrant and what is an emigrant? I want you in the chat to message me your definition of both right now. Yes, Jessica, you can do that. So message to me your definition of immigrant and emigrant. Okay, so Synovia says, an immigrant is a person who comes from a country to another. Katie says that an immigrant is a person who has moved from one place to another. Kiara says an immigrant is when someone moves from another country and settles there. Naya says someone moving from place to place. Manuel says when you move from one country to another. Synovia says an emigrant is someone who flees a country. So I think we've got enough responses here to keep going. That is correct. I think that everybody had the correct answer that had submitted it there. So an immigrant is someone who is coming into a country. Remember, if you struggle with this, you have your Latin here, immigrant. Due to some linguistic rules, it changes to an M, so it's confusing, but it's actually in here. And then here we have E or X, which is out of. So you're going out of a country. That's important to frame as we begin our lesson here again. Thank you for your participation. We're going to read a text about early immigration. It's going to tell us some important things about push and pull factors. So a push factor is a reason why someone might be pushed out of their country, and a pull factor is a reason why someone is going to want to leave and go to a new country. So it's what is attracting someone to that new country. So when you think about push and pull, think about someone's pushing you out the door, so a factor, out of the door of your country, or something's pulling you. So you pull open the door and you walk into that country yourself because there's something there that is attractive to you. So I'm going to read the text early immigration. Once again, if you don't have the packet, check the chat. I sent a link that has the packet for today there. Early immigration. Why were so many people ready to give up everything familiar, their hometowns and villages, often their families, and almost always their friends, for life in a strange new land? Obviously, the reasons were not the same for all who came. In general, though, we can say that there was a push and a pull in each person's decision to leave for America. This might be common sense, but let's highlight it. There's obviously going to be a reason why people are going here. We're going to learn today that it was not an easy journey. You wouldn't just go to the United States for fun. You had a reason to do it. The main push for most immigrants was economic. Let's highlight or underline that. Maybe even circle economic. At that time, the great majority of people in every European country, as everywhere in the world, made a living by farming. Between 1750 and 1850, the population in Western Europe doubled, but the amount of farmland did not. That meant that farming families would have to make do with less land. This is what happened to countless German farmers. Farming smaller, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. When you don't mute yourself, then I have to leave the text. So please mute yourself so that I can keep going here. Between 1750 and 1850, the population in Western Europe doubled. But the amount of, or sorry, I already read that. I'm going to go to the last sentence here. Farming smaller plots of land, many of them had begun sliding into poverty by the 1830s. That's important. So I'm going to underline that here. Some left for nearby cities, but many headed straight for the United States. In a few countries, there was another economic factor. In Great Britain and in some of the German lands, industrialization, making goods in factories with the aids of machines, had begun. Industrialization, we already know that word. Let's circle it though, because it still is an important vocabulary term. In time, factories would mean more jobs, not fewer. So let's highlight that. We might already know that from our last unit, but it's still really important to recognize that. But in the early stages of the factory system, machines replaced skilled workers, leaving them without jobs. So, we have some automation here. Some took jobs in new factories, but many others chose to leave their homeland. So many people are going to leave the country that they are in now and choose to immigrate to the United States. Religious and political persecution were also push factors. That's important. We might already know that because we've studied the Pilgrims a little bit, perhaps, but really knowing what these push factors are is important because it's going to be both that play into why people are immigrating here. Protestant groups like the Mennonites and the Amish were eager to flee religious persecution in Germany, and liberals who had supported the revolutions that swept through Europe in 1830 and 1848 often felt like they had to leave after those revolutions failed. So maybe we'll circle these dates here, as we often can do with important dates, and highlight this. What's important here is that people are pushing for more rights and freedoms, and when they're not getting them, they're saying, well, the United States is the land of opportunity. Perhaps I can get those freedoms if I emigrate to the United States. Now what we need to do, now that we've read that text as a class, is we are going to, we're actually going to skip this question, and we're going to come back to that. But before we this next activity, I'm going to head back to the regular Zoom chat here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a second. And I'm going to ask 1 to 2 scholars to share out some of the major push. So one scholar will do push factors and the second one will do pull factors. So just raise your hand when you would like to share. Josue, I'm going to let you go first. So just state which one you're going to share.
Push factors.
Okay. And what were the major push factors, Josue?
They want people heard that America was the land of the free, I think, and they said maybe they could get those opportunities if they migrated to America.
Yeah, so you're right. Spot on, Josue. Thank you for sharing. So there was a lot of economic factors in terms of job opportunities. And then Anaya, I had your hand up first. I'm going to have you share the pull factors. You could just unmute yourself, Anaya. There we go. Anaya? I'm having trouble hearing you, so we're going to come back to you at some point. I'm going to go to Bintu. Bintu, can you share some of the pull factors? Bintu, you're actually picking up some static. I think it's because you have 2 profiles right now. Can I get another hand up? And then Bintu, once you're able to fix that audio, I'll have you share later in the lesson, but it's causing some static. Could someone else raise their hand and share some of the pull factors here? If not, I will cold call someone. All right, Joseph, I see your hand. Just raise it on the chat window. In the future, I'm unmuting you.
So a push factor and a pull factor, one of them were that like people were trying to escape religious problems. Like let's say somebody was like not against a religion in their country, then they would move to the United States.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Joseph. And I'm going to mute you again. So that's it. Those are some of the issues here. So there's economic opportunity. People want jobs in factories through industrialization. People want religious freedom. And maybe they want more land because there's more expansion going on in states. So I'm going to share my screen again and head back to our next activity here. Okay. So as you can see on my screen and in your packet, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually take a look at some of the perspectives that are going on here from immigrants that are coming into the United States or that are really trying to adjust to American culture. So we have an Englishman from New Hampshire. We have a Dutch woman from Massachusetts, a Norwegian from New York, a a German that's in Missouri, a Swede in Illinois, a Welshman in New York, and a Norwegian in New York. What I want you to do is I'm going to put a couple of these pages up in case you don't have the packet and you can't download it. You're going to take about 5 minutes to read through all these perspectives and answer the charts here. And then you're going to head to the question, and I want you to answer this question. So this question here, how do these accounts differ from each other? I'm going to put each page up for 2 minutes. So if you don't have the packet, you have 2 minutes to read through each one. So 2 minutes for this page, 2 minutes for this page, and then you're going to answer that question. You can start now. You have 5 minutes, and then we'll share out after. You have about a minute to read this page that's on the screen here, these 3 perspectives. Make sure you're taking notes as you're going through in the boxes to help you organize your thoughts. In about 30 seconds. In 10 seconds, and I'm going to switch the page here. Okay, now you're going to move on to the next page here. You have about a minute to finish on this page. So make sure you can get through all of these.
Mr. Perennial,
Yes, Quincy.
when it says why is the immigrant so happy, some of the immigrants, they aren't really happy.
Yeah, I think it's just a blanket question there, Quincy. But maybe you can just say, what are the emotions that are going on here? And you can answer that one. That's a great question.
All right.
Thank you. Got a couple seconds, and then we're going to head to the question work here. Okay, I'm going to flip the page. And I want you to answer this question, number 2. How do these accounts differ from each other? And you can also maybe add in, how are they similar? So about 30 seconds, get something down on paper and have some thoughts ready, because I'm going to call on about 1 to 2 scholars to share. Okay, and our time is up, so I'm going to head back to Zoom here. Hit the raise hand button if you would like to share out your response to how the perspectives are both similar and different. And Nana, you may. Okay, Synovia.
Okay, so basically these perspectives are different because they talk about the things that helps them the most and like the different reasons why they're happy. Because one immigrant says that they're happy because of the land that they own. Another one says talks about free education and no taxes. And a Norwegian immigrant talks about how everybody has an equal opportunity and they can get different jobs. And they're different perspectives because they're all coming from different places that is in the US at the time.
Absolutely. That's a great response. Thank you for sharing. Can I get another hand? Yes, both of you may. Aubriana, Angelina. Adelaide, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay, so I said that the responses are similar because some of them are talking about how the immigrants are happy and how they're happy about the results that came from them coming to the US, and some of them are about like trying to convince their other family members to come to the US and live with them.
Right. Thank you for sharing, Adelaide. I'm going to mute you. And then Lysandra, I'd love to have you share, but we have to keep moving. So for the next thing, just keep in mind that when you were, when you were immigrating to the United States, it wasn't always great or grand, but there were some opportunities that you could have that you did not have before. So more land, job opportunities. Sometimes it went well for people and other times it did not. So I think it's important to recognize the American dream and the idea that you have opportunity in America, and that to some extent is true today, but it's not always true for everybody. And there are different situations in which it becomes more true, whether because of a little bit of luck and fortune, or because of race or family. And so those things do play into this, and that's important to talk about as well. What we are going to do now, however, is talk about one push factor that was heavily influential upon immigration into the United States. We are going to talk about the Irish potato famine. So I'm going to read through this text here, which is just below your question. And then we are going to be examining how this push factor played into immigration. The Irish potato famine. It began with a blight of the potato crop that left acre upon acre of Irish farmland covered with black rot. So let's first of all say this, a blight of the potato crop, let's highlight that, with black rot. As harvests across Europe failed, the price of food soared. Subsistence level Irish farmers found their food stores rotting in their cellars. The crops they relied on to pay the rent to their British and Protestant landlords destroyed. Peasants who ate the rotten produce sickened, and entire villages were consumed with cholera and typhus. Parish priests, desperate to provide for their congregations, were forced to forsake buying coffins in order to feed starving families, with the dead going unburied or buried only in the clothes they wore when they died. Now, this is crazy because there's no closure. And there is insane food storage shortage. Now, we know today that when someone passes away, we generally give them a funeral, and that's to have closure, and that's to say our goodbyes and to recognize maybe what that person did while they were alive. Think about how crazy it is that they weren't able to do that because it was too expensive. They had to literally afford food so that people could stay alive, because if they paid for the funerals, more people might die. So think about how crazy that is. That's what happened when the Irish were unable to rely upon the potatoes, which was a big part of their economy. Landlords evicted hundreds of thousands of peasants, who then crowded into disease-infected workhouses. So this is not good, because they have nowhere to go, and so they're going to go into these crowded and now disease-infected workhouses. Other landlords paid for their tenants to emigrate, sending hundreds of thousands of Irish to America and other English-speaking countries. So as a result, many people are coming to the United States from Ireland. But even emigration was often hundreds of desperate Irish into rickety vessels labeled coffin ships. In many cases, these ships reached port only after losing a third of their passengers to disease, hunger, and other causes. While Britain provided much relief for Ireland's starving populace, many Irish criticized Britain's delaying response and further blamed centuries of British political oppression on the underlying causes of the famine. So let's highlight that. The Irish famine of 1846 to 50 took as many as 1 million lives from hunger and disease and changed the social and cultural structure of Ireland in profound ways. So maybe let's circle this date here. The famine also spurred new waves of immigration, thus shaping the histories of the United States and Britain as well. The combined forces of famine, disease, and emigration depopulated the island. Ireland's population dropped from 8 million before the famine to 5 million years after. If Irish nationalism was dormant for the first half of the 19th century, the famine convinced Irish citizens and Irish Americans of the urgent need for political change. The famine also changed centuries-old agricultural practices, hastening the end of the division of family estates into tiny lots capable of sustaining life only with a potato crop. Basically, what that's saying here is this famine makes them realize the need for change. So this famine makes them realize, well, wait a minute, if one crop having an issue with it agriculturally means that, an entire group of people is dying out and having to leave their country, that's a problem. We need to look at other ways to produce income and to make sure that we can afford life. What we're going to do now is actually examine some images here. And I want you to basically go through and say, what do you see in this image? What emotions do you get from this image? How does it make you feel? If you're not actually feeling something, try to imagine what the photo is meant to instill. And how can this image help us understand the famine? So you have a couple of these images in here. What I want us to do is just take 2 minutes and get through as many of these as we can here. So I'm going to leave up this one for 1 minute and the next one for a minute, and you can start now independently. You have a couple seconds, and I'm going to flip the page here. Okay, I'm going to turn the page. I'm also going to write two definitions, two words that were in the text that I realized I didn't, and you might not have understood. So dormant means asleep or inactive. It comes from dormio in Latin, and then panacea is a cure. So these are some good words to use in your essay, but make sure that you are responding to these images here. Okay, and that's all the time we have for now. So what we're gonna do, sorry, is we are gonna help reflect on this question here. So I'm gonna turn back to the Zoom chat here. We're gonna have a couple people share out, maybe one or two, if we have time for this. How can we use these images and these perspectives to maybe help us become educated on what happened in the past, and how do we apply that to right now in the present? So it's a two-part question here. How are we going to use these images to help us study the past? And then why is that important for us now? So let's see who's raising their hand. I'm going to call on Silas.
Okay, just repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question is, why, how do we use these images to study the past, Silas? And what is the implication for us now?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. We use these images to study the past because basically these images are showing us like how people back then suffered during like these big events. For example, in the second picture shows that the kids are with the little kid.
Silas, I'm actually gonna mute you because I was able to hear some of that, but there's some background noise and it's hard to hear you. But I heard that you were saying that it's important to kind of see how people are suffering, and then you were going to make an implication. Can one more person just kind of add on to Silas? So we know that people are suffering. What's the implication? Why does that matter for us? I'm going to call on Naya here.
So I want to add on to Silas by saying how. So we know that they're suffering, but the picture can't really show us how bad they're suffering. But what I see is I see there's a lot of people around there. They look like they have a poor it looks like they're poor, and I think that they were trying to grow potatoes, but it wasn't working.
Okay. So analyzing some of the picture here. Thank you for sharing, Naya. I'm going to have one more person go here. And I want you to kind of summarize, what is the implication for us now? Why does studying this matter? I'm going to call on Bintu. All right, Bintu.
Okay, learning about this would be very important because it makes us understand about how much people had to suffer back then, and and the difference between that and now, and also about how we can make change, because the potato famine made people in Ireland realize that they need change in their agriculture. So if we learn more about that now, then maybe we can also change some things about the way we live.
Wow, that was an awesome response. But that's exactly what I'm looking for. We need to, and that was awesome, Bintu. I'm going to give you a little clap here. Maybe some other people will too. That was an awesome response, because we see how people analyzed what's going on around them, and they saw the need for change, and we can do that today. That's awesome. That's exactly the type of response to think about. Now what we're going to do for the remainder of class is work on our independent essay. For your independent essay, and I know we don't have a lot of time, so I apologize. What I want you to do is answer the second bullet point there, the second bullet point. So I'll highlight that. You're going to answer this one and just take a couple minutes, and then maybe we'll have one person share out. So we don't have a lot of time for this. Let's take about 3 minutes to try to draft a response to this. You can start now. And then at the end of class, I will post the link one more time for the homework, and you'll have to make sure that you copy that down. So we have about 1:30. Remember here that we are trying to focus on our critical thinking. I want to know your opinion here. Okay, we got about 20 seconds, and then I'll be looking to have 1 or 2 scholars share out. So I'm going to head back to the Zoom now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, so we are out of time here. Hit the raise hand button if you would like to share out your response. So I've heard from both Synovia and, okay. I'm going to call on Logan here. All right, Logan.
Okay, so for the first question, the effects of the Irish potato famine where people died and they couldn't even get funerals, and people have loads of lost food, so if they didn't die, they just starved throughout World War, I believe, One.
Okay, and how would you feel, Logan, if you were in that situation? What would you do?
Horrible.
Why?
Because my whole family is dying, including me, and all I have, I have a chance of leaving or staying here.
Mm-hmm. What would you do, Logan, if you arrived in the United States? Eat? Would you look for a job? Would you?
I would leave for a job and never come back.
And never come back to Ireland?
I mean, probably will.
The easy way to see this is by
Okay. So thank you for sharing, Logan. I'm going to mute you now. That's all the time we have. So I'd like to have another scholar share, but it is 12:30. I'm going to put one more time the link to where your homework is in the chat. I have also sent this out on Jupiter. Please save this link because that's going to be where your homework is every night. In order to get to your homework, what you're going to do is hit that link, and there's going to be a folder that says 6th grade history. Every day, your packet and your homework will be labeled in there. So it's very important that you fill out that Google form, which is how you are going to be marked complete for your homework. And so if you have any questions about that, you can actually message me on Zoom, or you may email me. There is a document on that main page that has a link that you can hit to schedule a Zoom meeting with me. You can schedule a meeting from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Your homework will be checked at around 7 a.m. every day. So make sure that you do it tonight, and a video resource will be on there as well. So that's all the time I have. So I'm going to pass it off to Miss Scylla. I'm going to make her the host here. Or actually Miss Mari will have to make her the host, but that is all for me. So make sure that you write down that link and have a good afternoon.
All right, y'all. While Mr. Prednian heads out, we need you to get your number story things together. So once you do that, just press the thumbs up button.